All right, buckle up, everybody, because today's deep dive is taking us into the world of terrazzo.
Terrazzo.
Yeah, you sent in some really cool information on Terrazzo Setter Supervisors, a job title that, I'll be honest, doesn't exactly scream glamour at first glance.
Right.
Floors, right?
Yeah.
But you've done your homework on this one with these RoleCatcher guides, so I have a feeling there's more to this than meets the eye.
Yeah, I think so too.
So, expert speaker, you've had a chance to look over all these resources. What's the mission for today's deep dive?
Well, I think our listeners really try and get a sense of this career path, which is smart because it's kind of a hidden gem.
Okay.
And we want to give them like the full picture, like what does this job actually look like on a day-to-day basis? What's the potential there and would it be a good fit for them?
Okay.
So it's kind of like we're going to unveil a hidden mosaic.
Unveiling a mosaic. I like that.
Yeah.
So, first things first, for those who, like myself, might be picturing just plain old tile, what exactly is terrazzo?
Well, imagine this chips of marble glass granite. And they're all set in this like binder, and then they grind it down and polish it to this smooth, luxurious finish.
Mm.
It's super durable, it's versatile, and it can be incredibly beautiful.
Okay.
Think of like those upscale hotels that have those really cool floors,
Yes.
or historical buildings. It's really cool stuff.
Okay, so suddenly just floors sounds way more impressive.
Right.
So a Terrazzo Setter Supervisor is like they're the maestro of this whole process.
They're like the conductor of an orchestra.
Okay.
The RoleCatcher guide says that they oversee and manage the setting of terrazzo flooring for different kinds of projects. But it's more than just overseeing. It's about leadership problem solving
Mm-hmm.
and having a really good eye for detail.
And like a conductor, they probably have to be pretty good at thinking on their feet.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because the guide mentions working with architects, engineers, contractors. Like that sounds like a lot of moving parts.
A lot of personalities, too.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So a Terrazzo Setter Supervisor is kind of like that bridge between like the creative vision
Yeah.
and then like the practical realities of actually like, building something.
Right.
So they have to be able to read blueprints. They have to be on budget and on time and be able to make those really important on-the-spot decisions when something comes up.
Which, let's be honest, happens on every project.
Always happens.
Right.
Every single one.
Speaking of unexpected problems, the guide also mentions working in various weather conditions. So this isn't just a cushy indoor gig.
No, you're definitely right about that.
Huh.
One day they could be in like a really sleek and modern office building, and the next day they could be outside working on like a plaza,
Right.
battling the elements.
Wow. Okay.
It takes a lot of adaptability and resilience for sure.
Okay, so we're already seeing that this role requires like a very special blend of technical skill leadership and a little bit of grit.
Yeah.
It's not just knowing how to like lay down beautiful flooring. It's about managing all of the other complexities that come with bringing that vision to life. And I'm sure like on time and within budget.
Oh, for sure. Pressure's on.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so expert speaker. We've got a lot more to uncover about the life of a Terrazzo Setter Supervisor, but we're going to have to take a quick break.
Sound good.
So, expert speaker, we've only just scratched the surface here, and you sent some other information about industry trends and the outlook for Terrazzo Setter Supervisors.
Yeah.
And one figure really jumped out at me. Projected job growth for Terrazzo Setters is around 8% over the next 10 years.
It's a lot.
That's a big number.
Yeah.
Now, expert speaker, you always have your finger on the pulse of the job market. Put that in perspective for us.
So 8% is actually really significant. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, considers 5% to be like the average growth rate across all jobs.
Okay.
So this tells us that this isn't a field that's just keeping pace with like everybody else. This is outpacing it.
Okay, so why the growth spurt? Is it simply that Terrazzo is having a moment, or is there something more substantial that's driving this trend?
I think it's a couple of things. First, there's this renewed appreciation for sustainable building materials that are going to last a long time. And Terrazzo checks those boxes.
Okay.
It lasts forever. It's super low maintenance.
Yeah.
And it can even help contribute to LE certification for those green building practices.
So it aligns with all those broader sustainability trends that we keep hearing about.
Exactly.
Makes sense. What's the other factor that's driving the growth?
Just like construction activity.
Okay.
As like cities grow
Yeah.
and they have to renovate buildings or build new ones, they need people who can put down these beautiful and durable floors.
Right.
So the demand for skilled people who can do that is only going to go up.
So job security is looking pretty good for Terrazzo Setter
For
Supervisors.
sure.
Now let's talk about those pros and cons,
Oh,
because the RoleCatcher guide didn't shy away from either side.
right.
They highlighted some pretty attractive perks. Good pay, which, let's be honest, we all like to hear that. Opportunity for advancement, always a plus, but then there's this creative expression. Now, that's not something I usually associate with construction.
I love these deep dives because we find these little surprises.
Right.
But you're right. The guide really emphasizes that this job isn't just about, like following a set of instructions. There's room for like artistry, for putting your own touch on a project.
Okay.
It's about transforming a space with something beautiful and functional.
And I bet that's incredibly satisfying to step back at the end of a project and see this really tangible result of your work.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, I made that.
Yeah, and that's probably why they list hands-on work as like a pro.
Okay.
This is a job for someone who likes to get their hands dirty and be in the middle of everything, building something that's going to last.
So definitely not a desk job.
Yeah, way.
But let's flip the coin a little bit, because
Sure.
every job has its downsides.
Right.
And this one is no exception. The guide mentions it's physically demanding. There's exposure to dust, potentially chemicals. Expert speaker, paint a realistic picture for us. What are some of the not so glamorous aspects someone should be prepared for in this lane of work?
Let's talk about the physical stuff first.
Mm.
We're talking about lifting really heavy materials, being on your feet all day long. Sometimes you're in really awkward positions.
Yeah, I imagine.
And then you've got the exposure to dust and chemicals, so wearing the right safety gear and taking the right precautions, that's not really an option that's essential.
Safety first.
Yeah, for sure.
And then there's the pressure cooker aspect of it. The guide mentions high expectations and pressure to meet deadlines.
Totally.
And we talked about those quick decisions that a supervisor often has to make, expert
Yeah.
speaker. Give us a sense of what that pressure actually feels like on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. So picture this. You're on a really tight deadline. Your whole team is waiting for you to tell them what to do, and suddenly you realize there's something wrong with the blueprints.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Something that could completely derail the entire project.
Ugh, that's a high-stakes situation.
Right. So that's the kind of pressure a Terrazzo Setter supervisor deals with. They need to think clearly, make decisions really fast, and they have to be able to communicate really well with their team and everybody else involved in the project.
Okay, that's a lot more intense than I initially pictured.
That's a lot.
It sounds like a role that requires not only physical stamina, but mental agility and a tolerance for pressure.
Yeah, you've got to be able to just roll with the punches.
So we've established it's not just floors, there's artistry, there's leadership pressure, but you sent something else that I thought was really interesting information on specializing within the field of terrazzo setting. What caught your eye there?
Well, I thought the building and construction specialization was super interesting.
Okay, why is that?
Well, I thought the building and construction specialization was super interesting.
Okay, why is that?
It might seem kind of obvious at first because it's construction, right? But it's more than just knowing how to lay the terrazzo. It's about understanding different types of buildings, different materials, and even historical preservation guidelines.
Oh, wow.
Imagine you're restoring the lobby of some old theater.
Right.
You got to know that stuff.
So it's leveling up your knowledge. You're
Yeah.
not just a flooring expert. Now you're fluent in the whole language of the building process.
Exactly.
Wow.
And think about if you had to put in some really complex terrazzo design, and there's all these existing architectural features like curved walls, or maybe there's already some other kind of intricate mosaic in there.
Right.
You need to know how to make it all work together.
It's like a puzzle.
Yeah, it's a very expensive, very heavy puzzle.
Right, exactly. And speaking of leveling up, you also sent some information about the typical career stages for a Terrazzo Setter supervisor. So it's not like you just jump into the deep end as a supervisor on day one, right?
No, not at all. The RoleCatcher guide lays out the progression. You start at the entry level, then you move up to junior terrazzo setter, and then eventually you could become a senior terrazzo setter.
Okay.
It's pretty common in the skill trades.
Right.
You start by helping out, you're learning the ropes, and then as you start to get the hang of it and you get more confident, then they start giving you more responsibility.
So let's talk about that progression a little bit. Let's say someone is starting out as a junior terrazzo setter. What are they actually doing on a day-to-day basis?
Okay, so at the junior level, they're not just taking orders all the time. They're starting to do things more on their own.
Okay.
They might be helping to train new hires. They're working more with the senior setters to solve problems.
Right.
Remember we talked about those on-the-spot decisions?
Yes.
They're starting to get experience with that, but they still have someone there to guide them.
So they're getting a taste of leadership and decision-making, but in a more supportive environment?
Exactly. And I think a really important thing is they're also responsible for things like safety,
Oh, right, of
making
course.
sure everyone's following the rules. That's a huge deal on job sites like that.
Absolutely safety first.
Yeah. So it's a really important stage for developing those skills that they'll need when they become a supervisor.
And then eventually they move up to that senior level and then the supervisor.
Exactly.
Wow. It's fascinating to see how much responsibility gets added as you move up. You start with those like hands-on skills, but it's not just about that.
It's so much more than that.
It becomes about leadership,
Yeah.
problem solving, even like mentoring.
Like you're part of this team and you're all working together.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And I think it shows how valuable experience is in this kind of work.
Right.
Those years that you spend learning your craft, figuring out how to deal with all the different personalities on a job site.
Right.
It all comes together to prepare you to become a leader.
And to deal with that pressure.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And based on what we've talked about today, those rewards can be really amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not just in terms of like how much you can earn, but also just like feeling good about what you do.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground today.
Mm-hmm.
The artistry, the leadership, the pressure, the possibility of specializing, and even what the career path looks like. Expert speaker, if you had to pick like the most important takeaways for our listener, what would you say are the absolute most important things to think about when it comes to a career as a Terrazzo Setter supervisor?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is to remember that it's a job that combines like hands-on skills with being a leader, knowing how to solve problems and understanding how buildings are put together.
Right. It's not just floors.
No, it's definitely not just floors, and it's not for everybody. It's physically demanding.
Mhm.
There's a lot of pressure to make the right call, especially when you're on a tight deadline.
Well, you got to think on your feet.
But for the right person, someone who likes that kind of fast-paced environment and who gets a lot of satisfaction out of seeing a project through to the end,
Mm-hmm.
it could be a really great career.
Yeah. Incredibly rewarding.
So to our listener, we've given you a lot to think about here as you're weighing your options. Here's something to consider. Would you thrive in that environment where things move really fast and your decisions make a real difference?
It's a good question.
Or would you find the physical work and the pressure just a little bit too much?
You really have to be honest with yourself about what you're looking for in a job.
Right, and this is all about finding the right fit. And remember, this deep dive is just the beginning of your research.
Exactly. There's so much more out there.
If any of this has piqued your interest, dive into those RoleCatcher guides you found. They've got information on everything from what's happening in the industry to how to ace your interview.
And who knows, maybe someday you'll be the one supervising the installation of one of those amazing terrazzo floors that makes everyone stop and go, wow.
That's beautiful.
It's more than just a floor. It's art.
It's art.
Exactly.
This was fascinating. As always, thank you so much for lending your expertise to this deep dive.
Always a pleasure.
And to our listeners out there, we'll see you on the next deep dive.